What is champagne? At the most basic level, it's a sparkling wine. But here's the thing. That's exactly where most people's understanding stops, and it really shouldn't. Because not all sparkling wine is champagne, and that distinction is maybe the single most important thing you can understand before you spend €1 or £1 on a bottle. And sorry if I'm about to mispronounce a remarkable number of foreign words. Champagne is not a style. It's not a flavor profile. It's not a vibe. It is a place. Specifically, a legally defined region in the northeastern corner of France, roughly 150 kilometers east of Paris. The grapes must be grown there. The wine must be made there. Every single step, harvest to labeling, takes place within those boundaries. This protection, known as a PDO, a protected designation of origin, gets recognized by the European Union and by international trade agreements, which means producers elsewhere simply cannot put the word champagne on their label. That's why you have Italian Prosecco, Spanish Cava, American sparkling wine, but only one champagne. Some older California wineries technically still print California champagne on their bottles. There are legacy trade arrangements that technically permit it, and most of the wine world finds that uncomfortable, let's say. But the real thing comes from one place. Take away the geography, and you no longer have champagne. You have something else, sometimes very good, occasionally excellent, but something else entirely. Now, the region itself. Hang on, because this part matters more than most people expect. It sits at the absolute northern edge of where growing grapes in France is even remotely practical. Cool, frequently gray, subject to frost that can arrive without much warning, and without particularly caring what it ruins. Not the sun-drenched landscape most people picture when they imagine wine country. But wait, that coolness? That is the whole point. When grapes ripen slowly in a cold climate, they hold on to their natural acidity, and acidity is what makes champagne tick. It's what gives the wine its freshness, its precision, that quality where the bubbles feel alive rather than flat and heavy. Without it, the wine just falls apart. The climate, as uninviting as it sounds on paper, is absolutely essential to what ends up in the glass. And beneath the surface, the region sits on a deep bed of chalk, left behind by an ancient seabed that existed long before anyone planted a vine there. This chalky subsoil drains water efficiently enough that the roots don't drown, but still holds just enough moisture to feed the vines through dry stretches. It also reflects warmth upward, helps the grapes ripen despite the cold air above. That combination, cool climate, chalk underground, is not something you can simply recreate by moving the vines somewhere else and hoping for the same result. It's specific to this place, this ground, these particular fields. And that specificity is something winemakers in other parts of the world have been chasing, sometimes brilliantly, for decades now. They get close. They don't quite get there. The region breaks into several main growing areas. The Montagne des Reims, the Côte des Blancs, the Vallée de la Marne, the Côte de Sézanne, and the Aube. Each has its own microclimate, its own soil profile, each contributing something slightly different to the wines made from its vines. In the wine world, this layered idea that a specific combination of climate, soil, topography, and human tradition produces a wine that tastes like nowhere else is called terroir. It's a French word without a clean English equivalent. The closest you get is the taste of a place, In Champagne, that is not a marketing phrase. It is the foundation of everything. Most Champagne is built from 3 grape varieties, just 3, and you really don't need a longer list. Chardonnay is a white grape, crisp, mineral-driven, notes of lemon, green apple, chalk, fresh cream. It gives the wine lift and elegance, a kind of focused, precise quality that makes it particularly brilliant alongside food. It's the dominant variety in the Côte de Blanc. Then Pinot Noir, technically a red grape, but in Champagne the skins are removed almost immediately during pressing, so only the clear juice makes it into the wine. It adds body, structure, red fruit, brioche, weight. Keeps things from feeling too delicate. And then Pinot Meunier, the least celebrated of the 3, and honestly, arguably, the most reliably useful. It ripens consistently, even in difficult years, and it brings softness and approachability that makes the wine easy to like from the very first sip. Most champagnes blend all 3 in different proportions. Some use only one variety. That single choice shapes the entire personality of what ends up in your glass. Now here's the thing, the bubbles. Because this is where things get genuinely fascinating. The process is called the méthode champenoise, the champagne method, and it has been refined and protected over more than 3 centuries. It starts with the harvest, usually late September or early October. Grapes picked mostly by hand because bruised or damaged fruit can spoil the delicate juice before the process has even properly begun. They're pressed gently and quickly, and the juice goes through its first fermentation, just like any other wine. Yeast consumes the natural sugars and produces alcohol and carbon dioxide. At the end of that process, you have a still wine, flat, sharp, often quite tart. Not something you'd choose to pour at a party. But it is the raw material for something completely different. Then comes blending, and let me slow that down, because this is really the heart of the entire operation. The chef de cave, the head winemaker, assembles wines from different grape varieties, different vineyards, and in most cases, different years. A single non-vintage champagne can contain wines from 10, 20, even 40 different lots. The goal is consistency, to build a wine that tastes like the house's signature style year after year, regardless of what the weather did in any particular season. Part science, part accumulated intuition. The best chefs de cave develop something close to a sensory memory for what the blend needs to become. You see what's happening? It's not a formula you write down and hand to someone new. It's a form of knowledge that lives in the body, in the palate, in the accumulated memory of thousands of separate tastings. And it takes years to properly build. You don't arrive with it. Once the blend is set, the wine goes into bottle. A small mixture of sugar and yeast, the liqueur de tirage, is added, and the bottle is sealed with a crown cap, exactly like a beer bottle. Inside, the yeast begins consuming the added sugar and triggers a second fermentation. Carbon dioxide builds up with nowhere to go, so it dissolves directly into the wine. That is where the bubbles come from. Not a machine, not carbonation added at the end. A second, slow fermentation happening inside every individual sealed bottle, one by one. After that second fermentation, the yeast dies and settles as sediment. The wine then rests on those dead yeast cells. This is called lees aging, and it's where champagne picks up those toasty, bready, biscuit-like qualities you notice when you drink it. Non-vintage must spend at least 15 months on the lees. Vintage needs a minimum of 3 years. Prestige cuvées often go considerably longer than that. Eventually, the sediment needs to come out. The bottles are gradually tilted and rotated over weeks. Remoage, or riddling, until all the dead yeast collects in the neck. Traditionally done entirely by hand, one careful quarter turn at a time by skilled workers called huimours. These days, most large houses use mechanical cages, gyropalettes, which accomplish in a few days what used to take 6 weeks. Kind of like watching centuries of artisan craft get quietly rationalized by efficiency, one careful rotation at a time. With the sediment in the neck, the bottle tip is briefly frozen, the crown cap is removed, and a small plug of frozen dead yeast shoots out cleanly under the pressure of the wine. That's disgorgement. A small amount of wine and sugar, the dosage, is added to top the bottle back up. How much sugar determines the final sweetness. Then the cork, the wire cage, the label, and eventually a shelf somewhere in the world. The full journey, from first harvest to the day a bottle actually reaches you, can take anywhere from 2 years to well over a decade. Okay, watch this. Once you understand that process, the different styles start making real sense. Non-vintage, NV on the label, is the most common. It blends multiple years and is designed to express the consistent character of the house rather than any particular season. This is where most people start and where many happily stay. Vintage comes from a single exceptional harvest year, and houses only declare a vintage when conditions have been genuinely outstanding. These wines carry more complexity, a stronger connection to a specific moment in time, and they age with real grace. Blanc de Blanc, white from whites, is made entirely from Chardonnay, precise, mineral, brilliant alongside food. Blanc de Noir, white from black grapes, skins removed, tends to be fuller-bodied and richer. Rosé gets its color from brief skin contact or, more commonly in Champagne, from adding a small amount of still red wine to the blend. More aromatic, strawberry and cream, immediately likable. And at the very top of most houses' ranges sit the Prestige Cuvée, finest vineyards, best grapes, aged the longest. Moet and Chandon's Dom Perignon, Louis Roederer's Cristal, Laurent Perrier's Grand Siècle. These aren't just bottles of champagne, they're statements about what the region is genuinely capable of. The sweetness labeling. Okay, I want to say clearly, you are not wrong to find this confusing. It genuinely is. Driest to sweetest. Brut Nature has no added sugar whatsoever. Extra Brut has barely any. Brut, the most common category, is dry, and it's what most people mean when they order without specifying anything. Then, and here's the counterintuitive part, extra dry is actually slightly sweeter than Brut. Sec is noticeably sweet. Demi-sec is decidedly sweet, and genuinely excellent alongside dessert. So, extra dry is sweeter than Brut. The naming makes very little sense, and you're not alone in finding it strange. The practical answer, when in doubt, reach for Brut. Dry, versatile, works with almost everything. Reading a label is easier than it looks once you know what you're looking for. The producer name is most prominent. Might be a large house like Boulanger, Tétanger, or Veuve Clicquot, or a smaller grower-producer. A year on the label means vintage. No year means NV. Style and sweetness should both be clearly stated. On the back label, look for small two-letter codes. NM stands for Négociant Manipulant. The producer buys grapes from other growers. RM is Récoltant Manipulant, a grower who makes wine exclusively from their own land. CM is Coopérative Manipulant, a cooperative of growers working together. Small codes, easy to miss, but they tell you something real about what you're actually holding. Serving it correctly. Look, this isn't about ceremony. It's about a few small decisions that genuinely affect how the wine tastes. Temperature is the most important one. Serve it between 8 and 10 degrees Celsius, roughly 46 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Too warm, and the bubbles feel aggressive, the wine flat and dull. Too cold, and the aroma closes up completely. A few hours in the fridge, or about 20 minutes in a bucket of ice and water, gets you exactly where you need to be. That difference is not subtle. You will actually notice it, and so will whoever you're pouring for. Glassware matters more than most people expect. The classic flute is elegant and keeps the bubbles going well, but its narrow shape traps the aroma, and you miss a lot of what's in the wine. For a straightforward non-vintage, a flute is perfectly fine. For anything with real depth, a vintage bottle, a prestige cuvee, use a white wine glass or a tulip-shaped glass. You will smell and taste noticeably more. The vintage coupe looks magnificent in a photograph and does very little for the wine itself. Temperature and bubbles both escape far too quickly. When opening, keep your thumb over the cork, hold it firm, slowly rotate the bottle rather than the cork. A soft, controlled release. A loud pop is wasted wine, and honestly, it doesn't impress anyone who actually knows what they're watching. Most non-vintage champagne is designed to be enjoyed young, within 3 to 4 years of purchase. Vintage wines and prestige cuvée can develop beautifully for a decade or more, gaining layers of complexity that only time can build. If you have a bottle worth keeping, store it on its side in a cool, dark place. Leave it completely alone. The patience required is real, and it does pay off. With food, champagne is far more versatile than it usually gets credit for. Oysters are the most classic pairing. The wine's acidity cuts through the brine with real precision, and that combination has been celebrated for centuries for very good reason. Fried food is the one that genuinely tends to surprise people. French fries, fried chicken, tempura, battered fish. The bubbles and acidity clean the palate between bites of rich, fatty food in a way almost nothing else can manage. Soft, creamy cheeses, brie, camembert, triple creme, pair beautifully, the acidity balancing the richness of the cheese. Blanc de Blanc alongside sushi is one of the great underappreciated pairings in all of gastronomy. Caviar and prestige cuvée have been matched for so long, it's almost become a cliché. But clichés tend to exist because they genuinely work. And for desserts, reach for demi-sec rather than Brut. A dry wine alongside something sweet will taste harsh and wrong. Match sweetness with sweetness. Simple rule, real difference. When it comes to buying, you don't need a large budget, but understanding what you're paying for helps you make smarter decisions. The large houses, Moet and Chandon, Veuve Clicquot, Paul Roger, Boulanger, invest enormously in consistency at scale. Their non-vintage wines are reliable, widely available, built to deliver a predictable, well-made experience every time you open one. There's genuine value in that kind of reliability. But grower champagne, that RM on the label, that's where things get genuinely exciting for a more curious buyer. A Récoltan Manipulan makes wine exclusively from their own vineyards, and those bottles tend to carry stronger personalities, more distinctive expressions of a specific place, and often much better value for what you're actually spending. Names like Aigli Ourier, Ulysse Colline, Pierre Gimonet, and Jacques Sellos have devoted followings among people who really know this region well. A solid non-vintage Brut from a reputable house in the 30 to 50 euro range is a reliable, genuinely rewarding place to start. And when in doubt, just tell whoever is working at the wine shop what you enjoy, what the occasion is, what you want to spend. A good merchant will take care of the rest. A few things worth clearing up quickly. Not all sparkling wine is champagne. Prosecco, Cava, Cremant, Sect, American sparkling wine are all their own products, all worth exploring, none of them champagne. A higher price does not automatically mean a better wine. Brand recognition, production scale, and scarcity all push costs up in ways that don't always map directly to quality. Grower-producers regularly outperform famous labels at a fraction of the price. And the idea that champagne only belongs at milestone moments, that's probably the most limiting belief in all of wine. Open a bottle on a Wednesday with whatever is on the table. It is a wine. Treat it like one. Dom Perignon, the monk, was a real person, a Benedictine at the Abbey of Hautevillers in the late 1600s, who made genuine contributions to champagne winemaking, particularly in blending and in pushing for stronger glass that could actually hold carbonation pressure without shattering. But he did not invent sparkling wine. And that famous line about drinking stars? Almost certainly invented in the 19th century to give the legend a more romantic story than it actually had. I mean, yeah. History is almost always more complicated than the myths we prefer to tell about it. Champagne's connection to luxury wasn't something that happened organically. It was built, deliberately, over centuries, by people who understood that perception shapes value as much as quality ever does. The great houses of the 18th and 19th century positioned their wines at the tables of European royalty, cultivated relationships with aristocrats across the continent, and supplied the French court with an ambition no other wine region could match at the time. When Napoleon Bonaparte drank Moet before his military campaigns, people noticed. They remembered it. During the Belle Époque, it became the drink of Parisian café life, synonymous with pleasure, modernity, a certain way of moving confidently through the world. Later, Hollywood glamour, Formula One podiums, New Year's countdowns in every time zone on Earth. Talk about an image that refuses to stop growing. That cultural weight, accumulated deliberately over 3 centuries, is now inseparable from the product itself. Champagne tastes the way it does because of chalk, climate, and technique, but it feels the way it does because of everything human beings have chosen to pour into it. All that history, all that intention, all those particular moments when someone thought, yes, this is exactly the right thing to open right now. You started knowing champagne as a sound and a feeling. You end knowing it as something more. A wine from a cool, chalky corner of France, made from 3 specific grapes, shaped by 2 fermentations and years of patient aging, and a long chain of careful decisions at every stage. The bubbles are born inside the bottle. The label tells you something real, if you know how to read it. A grower's wine and a house wine are two different expressions of the same tradition. It belongs at Tuesday dinner just as much as Saturday celebrations. And the temperature you serve it at, the glass you pour it into, the food you put beside it, all of that matters quietly in ways you can now actually notice. Understanding a wine doesn't make it less enjoyable. It makes it more. Because now, when you hear that sound, that short, clean, completely unmistakable sound of a cork leaving a bottle, you know exactly what's inside, where it came from, how it was made, how long it waited to reach you. And somehow, knowing all of that makes it taste even better.